This video, we're going to talk about, someone who quit the working in the finance industry due to finding the workplace culture quite toxic, and they just tried out a few different jobs and found out what would work for them. Let's listen to a story here.
I worked in equity sales for about a year and I actually really liked it. I loved learning about all kinds of different companies and stocks. I liked working with clients and my team was really fun. Eventually, though, I realized there weren't a lot of exit opportunities outside of finance for this role and not many opportunities to develop more analytical skills, which were more transferable. Somewhere along the way, I got really obsessed with the idea of working in investment banking. It was the idea of having investment banking analyst as my LinkedIn title and potentially working in private equity someday. It really felt like my dream job. I just really wanted it. And funny enough, it was never really about the money for me. I just thought it would be a challenging and fulfilling experience and help me get the jobs I wanted afterwards, like private equity. Luckily, I had a really good relationship with my manager in sales, and he had actually started his career in investment banking. So when I told him, hey, I want to be learning more analytical skills, I want to learn how to model, he was super supportive. He actually set up coffee chats for me with folks in investment banking at our company and even let me join a training for new investment banking hires. Bless this man, he was such a great mentor to me. Long story short, it didn't happen overnight, but I was eventually able to move into the real estate banking team at Morgan Stanley. So I didn't have to switch companies. It wasn't my first choice in terms of the team, but they were hiring and I really wanted the job, so things worked out. So why
So to go add a bit of context here, if you are brand new to the channel, I've worked at Morgan Stanley similar to her and other top investment banks like Goldman's. And let's just talk about a bit of this context of why people quit working some of these top roles. So she mentioned working in equity sales and she's focused on exit opportunities, right? Now, I think a key thing here is if you're pursuing a particular career or particular job as a stepping stone to the next stage in your career, she's doing a role in equity sales because she wants to move to private equity. Sometimes you should think about how long can you endure a role you don't like, or it's just a stepping stone. Some people, for example, they study accounting or audit before going into corporate finance, and they might really get miserable doing an auditing job, right? I know some people hate it, but it's like, how long can you sustain that? That's why you should think carefully about what careers move you're making and if you can really sustain it rather than just seeing it as, oh, it's a stepping stone, it's a couple years, I'll be fine. It really does make people completely crash out when they are miserable in some of these particular jobs. The other thing is, she said, oh, I just got it into my mind, I wanted to do investment banking. The thing is, you should be careful about why you're picking your career, because it's something you're going to do for the majority of your day, for the majority of your life, right? For most people. So, if you're just doing it for the prestige, the job title, the dream job thing, the social status that comes with the job, you're probably going to regret it. So you should think carefully about why you're picking certain career opportunities, right? There's a big difference between the reality of the job and what it actually is, right? You're thinking, oh, it's just going to be challenging and fulfilling. It might be a lot more stressful than you actually anticipate it to be. That's why you should think about the reality of the job, not just the job status or the position that it might be, right? And how it might put you in a position above maybe other people your age in terms of earning more or having more prestige than they do. Because you don't want to end up unhappy, but it's good she had a lateral move to try something that she wanted to actually do, as we'll continue to listen on here.
I quit? My first month in investment banking, I was such a gold star employee. It was my dream job at the time, and I knew how hard and competitive it was to get into that seat. So I really wanted to make the most of that and just learn as much as I could. I didn't mind staying late. I got so excited to be staffed on deals. And when I pulled my first all nighter, I was still so stoked. I know I sound crazy now, but that's how I felt at the time. Of course, that changed really quickly. My second month there, I remember it was a Friday at 5 p.m. I had already pulled a couple late nights that week, and I figured not much was going to happen that weekend. So I went to the gym, got home around 7, and that's when I get an email from my managing director to me and my associate saying, hey, we need a pitch deck by Monday for this IPO client we're pitching. I ended up going back to the office, working until 3 a.m. that Friday, 3 a.m. Saturday, and probably 3 a.m. Sunday night. I got to the desk on Monday and was told that the pitch meeting was pushed by a week. All of our work was for nothing. So imagine that happening, but every other week for months on end. You get no positive feedback and you're actually yelled at if you make a minor mistake. This is so petty of me, but I still have an iPhone note from my banking days where I used to make notes of every insane thing that happened. One time I worked 25 hours, and when I got back to the desk, I immediately got yelled at because I made a typo in a pie chart. You can look at the note. So long story short, I basically wanted to quit after my first month. But I had told myself I wanted to stick it out for a year, so it was hard, but I did. Banking made me just a truly miserable person. I was impatient with everyone around me. I was anxious all the time. I gained like 15 pounds from eating takeout and not working out. My teeth grinding was so bad that I actually still have problems to this day. I always had FOMO when I wasn't able to hang out with my friends, and even when I did, I was just complaining and being negative all the time. So what I did after, quitting felt very cathartic, and I felt a lot lighter when I finally did. But at the same time, I also felt like a total failure for a really long time. And the thought that kept haunting me was, so many people are able to work for years in investment banking. Why was I so incapable? What was wrong with me? And wasn't this exactly what I had dreamed and hoped and signed up for? I felt so incompetent and just wasn't interested in anything. I just felt like I wasn't cut out for doing any job at the time.
So this is kind of interesting, right? And this is when people do hit their breaking point. Sometimes they think they're going to be a good work martyr by doing all these extra hours, working late nights, and it kind of doesn't pay off for them, right? They always tend to put you under time pressure in a last minute basis in some top finance roles, and you'll be under pressure, and then you find out, oh, it's for nothing. That's something I dealt with many times. I've seen many other people discuss this, where you're under such intense time pressure, then you think, oh, it's some work we need to do for a client, and then it turns out the client doesn't need it until 2 weeks later, and you've just wasted your entire personal life on weekend getting it done. It's really a psychological operation or a psyop to kind of own all your time and not give you positive feedback, so you're desperately always seeking their approval and validation. And it's like really a power game they're playing with you. Now, I think it's quite important to be journaling if you're not happy in your current job, in your phone, on a notepad that you keep to yourself, so you can discuss whatever way you're feeling. And these are the type of things that are really important, rather than you having a verbal outburst in the office or a mental breakdown in public or at work because you're unhappy. If you're feeling miserable, anxious, dealing with health issues, you should think about whether it's worthwhile quiet quitting or even getting a layoff, because that might feel better for your mental health, and that's more important to you, of course, than just keeping a job where you're unhappy, right? Just for the high salary when it's impacting your health. I think the whole feeling of am I not good enough is quite a common feeling in many top corporate roles, not just in finance, legal, tech, any other industry where you might be trying your best, but it's never good enough. You always feel like you're doing less than, or people are doing better than you, and you're just not fitting in. It's quite a common feeling, right? The other thing is she's mentioning, oh, isn't this what I thought it would be? And there's always a big difference between what the reality of the job is and what you're sold it is, right? It's worthwhile remembering that companies, they sell and promote their career and careers at their company. It's a product to lure you in. They're not going to show you any of the negative aspects, right? So don't be a mark, don't be a dumb fan, a fangirl, a fanboy, an obsessed fan under an illusion. And that's when they will try to work you like a slave until you're unhappy for the rest of your life, just for a particular job title or working at a company with a prestigious title. You should have some respect for yourself. Don't be a work martyr or have Stockholm syndrome, where you just valuing the company of your own freedom or your own long-term life fulfillment, and they're pushing you to complete burnout. So let's listen to the final clip here.
Obviously, I had to push all these negative thoughts aside, so I figured it would be a good time to quit and travel for a couple months before finding a new job. This was the end of 2019, so of course, good timing. I only got to travel for about 2 months in South America before COVID hit. Then I was stuck in Argentina sharing an apartment with my ex-boyfriend who I had just broken up with. Also, story for another time. And I didn't want to talk to him, and there was nothing to do, so I applied for jobs. I got 2 job offers and ended up taking one in Mexico City because I guess my global chaos era wasn't over. It was with a tech company that was launching food delivery services. I still didn't know what I was interested in, but that sounded fun and exciting, so I decided to give it a shot. Then I moved to Mexico City for 2 years, and this was right after COVID. There was something about how different the environment of being in a startup and launching something is. I really liked my job after a while. And I think it was because versus banking, when people are always telling you what to do, at the startup, I got to dictate the terms of what I was doing because there were so many different problems to solve. And it was interesting because I went from doing $50 million deals where I felt like I had no impact to dealing with $10 food delivery orders where I felt like every little thing we did had a huge impact. And I liked feeling directly responsible for something rather than feeling like there were so many layers of people and we weren't directly doing anything. I was still working a lot, but it just didn't feel the same. There weren't pointless last minute fire drills or 100 versions of the same deck that was already perfect. We were trying to do things quickly and launch products that were just good enough to get into a market. And I really loved that. So I learned a lot, and luckily the business also grew really quickly. So I got promoted after a year and got to lead a strategy team for new launches. So things were going really great in my professional life, but on the personal side, I kind of felt that I had lived abroad for 5 years after college. The expat life of moving to new places just kind of got old and didn't feel new and exciting anymore. So while I liked my job, I started thinking about maybe going to grad school back in the US and starting to build a career back home since I'm from the US. I applied to business school and eventually got accepted at Wharton. And now 2 years later, I've graduated and I started a job as a chief of staff in tech. I started
So I would just want to discuss a couple of things, right? Lots of people feel burnt out in their career, and is travel a good thing after feeling burnt out in your career? First thing, I think yes, it's good for maybe 2 weeks to a month for a complete reset of your state of mind. But on the other hand, it's no if you're just traveling aimlessly, kind of escaping reality and running through your personal savings to escape reality, the reality that you need to work to earn money, right? It's worthwhile after your 2 to 1 month trip to really reassess how you want to earn income on your own terms, whether it's self-employment, getting an easier office job, which might be in the middle office, back office, rather than maybe a front office role where it's particularly stressful. And a couple acronyms I point out, right? So one I mentioned in my previous videos, which was double M, where you want to be focusing on avoiding miserable marriages, MM, and massive mortgages, because many people are trapped in their job because they're in a miserable marriage, they're in a massive mortgage, they kind of have a trash social life and work life, and they kind of have to stick with it to keep paying off the high interest rate mortgage and stick around in their marriage even though it's not working. But the other acronym I want to use, again, double M, you need to focus on maximizing minimalism and multiplying your money. And what I mean by that will give you more freedom, because if you can maximize your minimalism, you realize you don't really need to buy expensive things to live a life that you find fulfilling. And you can buy nice things whenever you want, of course, but minimalism and not being dependent on materialism, in a sense, gives you a lot of freedom. And if you multiply your money through savings or investments or other income sources, it gives you the flexibility to live and work wherever you want and do things however you want, although that's a longer term strategy. But the whole point is you don't want to be tied into a high paying status career where you're kind of unhappy doing it. Now, she mentioned, and I want to mention a side note here, quite important for all the guys out there watching. She says she was on holiday with her boyfriend, living with her boyfriend after a breakup, and she just didn't really want to speak with him. This is something to be careful of. I see this all the times where women are putting their career or their career growth way ahead of their relationship with a guy they might be in a relationship with. It's very common. So if you're a man out here like being a simp and pandering to a career woman, she's going to pick the career over you, right? I've seen many where a woman would travel to the other side of the world to progress her career and expect her boyfriend to put up with a long distance relationship, or all these times where boyfriends are kind of being the emotional support for their girlfriend, and she kind of sees him as lesser than her because she's focused on her career or impressing her boss rather than impressing her boyfriend or her husband. So you should think about that type of power dynamic if you are in a long-term relationship with a career woman, what you actually getting out of it. I think it's common for career women not to be focused on their relationship. Everything seems to be about career fulfillment. So don't get caught out here, like I say, being a simp if she sees you disposable. And that's just a broad statement, not necessarily about her, just about if you're in a relationship with a career woman as a man, right? Her career and social status will always come number one over the relationship or the family in many cases. A lot of these erratic career decisions I see she's done, it kind of worked out for her, but not necessarily a smart move. Moving to different countries, Argentina, working in Mexico, things like that, making kind of radical career moves. Sometimes it can work out, but a lot of times it doesn't. That's why you have to make strategic career decisions, which is something I help through my coaching, right? And what you need to think about is and what type of work culture works for you. You know, she mentioned working in this company in Mexico, which has more of a flat culture, which means flat culture is another way of saying less structure, less hierarchy. There's less last minute fire drills, things like that are very common in the finance industry. We have the last minute crises or projects you have to quickly do over like late nights and on the weekend, things like that. You have more fulfillment if you kind of are more connected to the end product, and if you can work at your own pace rather than being under stress all the time. So there are different work cultures you should kind of consider. A thing she didn't mention here is that she went to Wharton, right? And she did an MBA at Wharton. Now, there's different information of how much that costs online, right? But estimates could be that it's around $200,000 now for a 2-year MBA course, right? But let's just say it's a low ball. Let's say it's 100,000 US dollars. But the question is, how will she pay off that loan? Will she get a high-paying job over a long time period to pay that off? On top of high rent she's probably paying for living in different parts of the US where there are high paying jobs, or is there going to be a husband or a boyfriend in the future who's going to bail out her student loans? I've seen that's very common. Also, sometimes I see husbands and boyfriends, they do the right thing and then they're in a career woman and they end up paying off all her loans through saving up some of his money. So you should think about the dynamics you're in, again, as a side note, in a relationship scenario. But also, you know, if you're progressing your career, what debt are you taking on to develop skills? And is it actually worth it? And is it going to pay off? Or could you also progress your career and make more money without taking on massive debt to do MBA programs, which in some cases are completely unnecessary? And the thing is, also thinking about the stable long-term career trajectory for yourself. She's mentioning she's doing a chief of staff role in tech. Like, is it a good time to go into tech? What are the layoffs saying? Could she do well in another similar role? I mean, doing some job hopping, it's worked her as far as we can see, but sometimes it can be kind of reckless decision making when it comes to changing up your career. So I think people need to be careful. If you are quitting a job you don't like and deciding what to do after, you have to think it through carefully. Brings me to my final point. I offer career coaching, link in description if you want to speak with me directly. I help you progress a career that's actually fulfilling and stable, dealing with office politics, surviving and thriving some of these toxic dynamics, particularly as a man in the workplace. And I help you get promoted, deal with layoffs, and develop a financial independence plan so you're not at the whim of toxic managers. Link in description if you want to speak with me directly. 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and let me know in the comments how you feel about some of this experience.